Good day, Black Knight scholars. Mr. Deegan, it is Unit 10, Lesson 3, the 10-3 vid notes. Please write down on your sheets this learning target. I will understand the Korean and Vietnam Wars. And this is an American soldier holding a hat. Some American soldiers fought in both of these wars because they were one after the other. Let's talk about why they started and why the U.S. decided to fight in these wars. In summary, the U.S. government's anti-communism strategy in Asia led to America's involvement in wars in Korea, there it is in green, the North and South Korea, and Vietnam, and there's Vietnam in yellow, south of China. The Vietnam War demonstrated the power of U.S. public opinion in reversing foreign policy. It tested the democratic system to its limits, left scars on American society, and made many Americans deeply skeptical of future military interventions. Both of these wars did not go very well for the United States. The Korean War, Part 1. U.S. President Harry Truman, there he is, sent U.S. troops to the Korean War in 1950. Truman decided to do this to contain the spread of communism. Once troops get to the Korean Peninsula, they side with South Korea against the communist North. Korean War Part 2. After communist North Korea invaded South Korea, U.S. forces led a United Nations counterattack. So we didn't go alone. We went with other United Nations countries that put North Korea in retreat. The war ended in a stalemate in 1953, however, and the U.S. helped prevent South Korea from becoming communist. So let's look at these maps. First, North Korea invades South Korea in June 25th, 1950. And then look at how far North Korea gets. But then the U.S. come and look at how far we push back North Korea. But then, look at this. It's the exact same map as we started. Containment in Vietnam. In the 1950s, the communist government of North Vietnam tried to force South Vietnam to become communist. The U.S. helped South Vietnam to resist, and the U.S. wanted to follow its Cold War policy of containment of communism, that should say communism, in Vietnam. So the North is communist, the South is not communist. The U.S. sides with the South. The U.S. enters the Vietnam War. The U.S. military buildup in Vietnam began with U.S. President John F. Kennedy. There he is, the 35th president. JFK decided to give aid to South Vietnam, but not to send troops. In 1963, in a sad part of U.S. history, JFK is assassinated. And the new U.S. president, Lyndon Johnson, the 36th president, decided to send U.S. troops to Vietnam in 1965. The war that doesn't end. During the 1960s, the U.S. military defeats North Vietnam in many battles, but it could not force an end to the war. U.S. citizens were bitterly divided over the Vietnam War. There were many protests against the war in the U.S., especially on college campuses. And here is one such protest, men linking arm in arm with their protest poster. Nixon ends U.S. involvement. President Lyndon Johnson decided not to run for re-election in 1968. Richard Nixon is elected president. There he is. And he pledged to bring the Vietnam War to an honorable end. Nixon's policy of Vietnamization withdrew American troops from Vietnam while continuing to give aid to South Vietnam, our allies. Wah, wah. Nixon's plan fails. President Nixon's Vietnamization plan failed because South Vietnamese troops were not able to stop the invasion by the North Vietnamese army, which was aided by the Soviet Union. In 1975, North and South Vietnam merged under communist control, and today Vietnam is still a communist country. In 1974, President Nixon was forced to resign as president because of a scandal called Watergate. And this is the last picture of Nixon as president before he boards that helicopter and flies away from the White House lawn into a rather failed presidency. And he was the first American president ever to resign. We have 2 summary questions remaining. Please think of 2 questions, write them down on your vid notes, and then take the 10-3 Canvas quiz to test what you just took notes on. Until next time, this is Mr. Deegan signing off.